So a little bit of that, I think, infects just quietly, well, not so quietly, Stuff and Radio New Zealand. Because if you actually go on their websites just at the moment, particularly, I think it's it's Radio New Zealand, you'll find it very, very difficult to understand what happened yesterday in the Eastern Bay of Plenty at the two towns of Whakatane and Opotiki. Which, very helpfully now have markrons put over them, so at least you can say their names properly as they close them down. Yesterday, and I want to quote a particular individual who spoke yesterday afternoon, and I want you to be able to place the quote. Okay, so in looking at what happened in Opotiki and in Whakatane yesterday, I want you to be able to I'm going to read some quotes out to you, and I'm going to ask you who they belong to. All right, here we go. Gangs contribute nothing to society. That's quite strong, isn't it? Gangs contribute nothing to society. Gangs convoys, here's a second one, suck for everybody who is disrupted by them. Okay, yeah. Gang convoys suck for everybody who is disrupted by them. Here's the third one. One of the reasons that the law has been changed is to give police more powers to crack down on gangs is because I don't have any time for that kind of behaviour. All right? Well, that seems very strong, doesn't it? All right? And finally, we have been concerned about gang convoys and the intimidating nature of them. Right. 4 quotes yesterday. Now, the person who made those quotes is clearly pissed off, clearly upset, clearly not happy at what happened yesterday. The person who made those comments yesterday is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Chris Hipkins. Now, you would think, wouldn't you, having observed everything that the Prime Minister observed yesterday, given the powers, the extra powers on police to crack down on gangs, that what happened yesterday at Opotiki and Whakatane and what happens today as endures, it's carrying on as I speak to you now, you would think, wouldn't you, that the most powerful person in New Zealand would be able to pull in a Minister of Police who's gone conspicuously missing. I don't know, maybe she's been kidnapped. And anybody else that was within basic earshot and been able to read the Riot Act and say, on behalf of New Zealand, because I've believed all these things that I've just said, through the media yesterday afternoon, you need to do something. Now, what happened? So what did the Bay of Plenty District Commander do yesterday? Well, the Bay of Plenty District Police Commander, Tim Anderson, faced with prime ministerial displeasure and also aware that he had new power in his rucksack by which he could tackle gangs because the government had given it to him, what did he do? He shut down State Highway 2 for hours. He made sure that law-abiding members of the community could not travel in certain streets and then along State Highway 2. Why? Because he was giving priority, was Bay of Plenty District Police Commander Tim Anderson, to the gangs and their needs and wants, their passions and desires, their ability to wave one upraised digit in front of all New Zealand and say, Sieg Heil, F off, we're in charge, as they were yesterday. I was mollified slightly by the fact that as all this activity was happening, there were policemen and women in just their basic uniform, not a gun amongst them. They might have had the occasional taser somewhere proximate, writing out tickets. I felt safer, didn't you, Josh? Knowing that at the end of all that lawlessness, that anarchy, that supremacy of gangs over the rule of law in this country, that at the end of the day, there will be winging to them in some via New Zealand Post, which means it'll probably get there next year sometime, an infringement notice. Whoa!
Well, didn't you know they start behaving when you give them an infringement notice?
I can imagine that the mongrel mob and the barbarians will just sit there and they'll go, oh my God, I've got an infringement notice. Well, that's if they can find them. How would they know where they are? Because they didn't go over to them and say, what's your name, please? Can I have your license? No, they didn't. Why? Because they were scared witless. What we watched yesterday was fear. We watched absolute anarchy. We watched the gangs run a section of New Zealand. We watched them close down a state highway. We watched people going prevented from going on their lawful business because unlawful people were out of control. We witnessed yesterday, and we witness it still, in Whakatane and Aporiki, we are witnessing the reason why this government is not only fit to govern, but we are also watching the consequence of 20, 30, 40 years of the kid handling, the soft gloves approach to anarchists, terrorists, and to drug dealers, murderers, rapists, criminal antisocials in our community. And yesterday, they came out to play. Now, the mongrel mob is by no means the smartest big gang in New Zealand. In fact, it's probably the dumbest. I mean, it's made up of people who, look like them, for God's sake. We're not exactly dealing with the brains of Britain here. But they are probably the most populous. There are more mongrel mob members in this country and supporters and families and activists and associates than in any other gangs. The smart gangs tend to be the motorcycle gangs, the Hells Angels in particular. They try and stay out of trouble as much as they can, but of course often their natural instincts get them into trouble. But they try and stay out of trouble because police attention's bad for business, and they're in the business of selling drugs, standover merchants and all sorts of other illegal activity. They're gutless as well, but hey, they're the Hells Angels. They're not completely stupid. But the mongrel mob are. I mean, the mongrel mob is as stupid as anything. So normally that kind of activity, the Hells Angels would have gone, we might get away with it once, but, we're not going to be trying that one again because otherwise they'll come and seize our bikes and raid the pad and it's bad for business. So we won't do that. But no, the mongrel mob yesterday decided who really runs New Zealand. And that is the most disturbing and most dangerous and appalling part of yesterday, because any impressionable young Maori boy would have gained, or adolescent or teen, would have gained a very direct lesson yesterday, and that lesson is this: you can be a loser. Your parents can be addicts. Your parents can be petty criminals. Your parents can be, to be perfectly honest with you, as they probably are. You can fail at school. You don't need to get NCA level 1. You don't need to do anything, because there is an avenue for you to run your neighbourhood, your community, your city, your country. And it is the mongrel mob. And that's what happened yesterday. I am stunned that, now, why did I raise the Public Interest Journalism Fund? Because Stuff, particularly, and Radio New Zealand now, very scared of saying the word Maori and crime together. Very scared of suggesting Maori and antisocial fit. But all those mongrel mob guys yesterday, I tell you what, they were predominantly one ethnicity, and this is their revenge. Not the Waitangi Tribunal, not going to the courts. No. And these guys, the mongrel mob, they're not in league with the so-called mafia leaders of the iwi leaders. They don't go along to the Tainui forums or anything like that. They're not at Ngaitahu tourism or anything like that. No, they're their own people. And yesterday, they ran this country by running decent citizens and the police off the road and taking it over. I don't think I've ever been so appalled in my life. I don't think I've ever been so much as you know, I've been very strong on this topic for 30 years. As you know, I have warned of this. As you know, possibly, I have said this is the natural consequence of what governments have been doing with gangs. They haven't done anything to stop the recruitment of young Maori boys in particular into gangs, and they have done even less with those gangs once they get into criminal activity. They should have all been. I gave them the option. I said 20 years ago, after we all thought that not ISIS, but Al-Qaeda and all those, and we banned them in this country, and we said, if you do anything, we'll, strip you of your civil rights, we'll put you in prison or anything like that. And we named 9 or 10 terrorist groups in this country. In the Suppression of Terrorism Act, I think Helen Clark put it into the House. It was unanimously supported by Parliament at the time. I said, why don't you add the mongrel mob to that? Why don't you add Black Power? Why don't you add Hells Angels? Why don't you add all of those gangs? Because out of Al-Qaeda and the mongrel mob, out of ISIS and out of the Hells Angels, there's only one group that is on a persistent, daily and dangerous basis undermining and terrorising society. And it ain't those guys with their turbans over there. I'd love to get your thoughts on that one this morning, but it just seems to me that yesterday this country surrendered officially. The Prime Minister wrung his hands like Pontius Pilate, if I can continue with the theological analogies this morning. He wrung his hands as the innocent, the law-abiding, and the respected of our society, which is most of us at the end of the day, Maori and non-Maori, had to stand aside and let the gangs run a part of New Zealand for as long as they wanted to. Always, of course, facing the clear knowledge that one day New Zealand Post might deliver them an infringement notice. Your thoughts on this morning? I can't think of anything that's going to more describe the state of our country than watching that funeral procession of mongrel mob riding on both sides of the roads yesterday, and the police writing tickets as they close the road to everybody but the mongrel mob.